of God among us, for the word of God within us, we give thanks. Well, John doesn't begin his gospel like the other gospels with the birth of Jesus or a genealogy. John doesn't tell us about his birth at all. John begins with the words, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." For John, Jesus isn't born, he exists from the beginning of time. So the scripture we just heard is John's account of the first sign that Jesus performed. John uses the word sign when he talks about Jesus' miracles, but it's because they point to something beyond themselves. The miracles confirm Jesus' identity. Jesus is not just some nice guy or a prophet. Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus' miracles are events that are not humanly possible. Therefore, they're signs that point to the fact that Jesus is God. They reveal the invisible Father through the actions of his Son. The miracles reveal Jesus' glory. They help us learn who Jesus is, who God is, and how we're called to live in this world. So Jesus did this first sign in Cana of Galilee. Jesus came along with his mother and his disciples, and they were guests at the wedding. Well, the wine at the celebration ran out. And why they ran out of wine on this most important occasion in the village of Cana, we don't know. Did the hosts not plan adequately? Were there more guests than the host had expected? What went wrong? We don't know, but whatever the reason, the shortage of wine was a shameful event for a host. The host would want to convey a richness of hospitality. This would be a devastating event for the host in an honor culture like back then, and it would cause a shameful feeling of poverty. So through his miracle or sign, Jesus revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Because of it, his disciples' faith in him and understanding of him was deepened. But his mother already believed even before the sign. The wine ran out, and that was a problem. Jesus' mother recognized the need. She knew that Jesus could solve the problem, and she told Jesus they have no wine. Well, Jesus debates with her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." I almost picture him saying that with an attitude. What does that have to do with us? And I can only imagine his mother's response. My mother had what we called the look. I don't know if any of you had mothers like that, but when my sister and I did something bad, Mom would turn and she would give us her look. And we knew that we were in trouble. She didn't have to say a single word. Her look said it all. But we also knew what it meant, and we also knew we better take care of it. I would have never dreamed, though, of calling my mother woman. That definitely would have warranted the look and probably something more. So when I hear Jesus' response, "Woman, what concern is that to me and to you?" I see his mother giving him her version of the look. So I wonder why Jesus thought that his time had not yet come. Maybe Jesus thought that his first miracle should be something more grand to draw a lot of public attention. Or maybe Jesus didn't feel ready to take on what would come after, but his mother knew what was best. And so she headed back to the party, confident that the matter had been handled. Don't you love that picture up there? It's a painting. All right. So Jesus watched his mother walk away, and he turns to the servants to handle the problem. Even Jesus, who was there at the beginning of time, needed someone to call his attention to a need right in front of him, to remind him of his purpose, and to remind him that his time had come. Woman, what concern is that to me and you? But Mary, even though Mary is never called by name by John, realized that calling people to recognize the problem in front of them was her concern, to call out the need that existed. So this week, I invite you to listen to the voices we aren't hearing, those who've been told to be quiet. With tomorrow being Martin Luther King Day, it's the perfect time to celebrate his life and to find a need in the world. To listen for those voices that may be telling us that our time has come. They may be calling out our gifts we didn't even think that we were ready to use. And then think about the times you thought about speaking and then decided it wasn't your business, or you weren't qualified to speak about it, or what could one voice matter in such a big mess? What if Mary hadn't spoken? What if she hadn't instructed the servants to do what Jesus told them to? Woman, what concern is that to you and me? You know, it's such a tempting thought to be told that this isn't your problem. It's so much easier to leave the problem for someone else to take care of. The needs can seem beyond our ability. I know I feel that way about many issues, things like systemic racism, homelessness, reducing gun violence, for example. Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? Well, Mary was what I call a noticer. She paid attention and saw the need in front of her, and she gave it a voice. Mary saw a need, asked, "What's the plan?" and then went to someone that she knew would be able to address the issue. Jesus, even though he initially thought that it wasn't his problem, initiated a plan. He directed his servants on what to do, and the problem was corrected. Well, a lot of wine doesn't seem like a life or death problem to us here. It was back then because of the shame culture. But this story does teach us that as Jesus followers, how ministry should work. Some of us are called to be like Mary. We notice things and we point them out to others. Mary was sitting at the party and overheard the servant's comment, "Pour slowly, that's all the wine we've got left." It would likely have been easier to just sit there and stay quiet. And she thought, what can I do about it? And she thought, I know, Jesus can take care of this. Others of us are like Jesus. We come up with a plan on how to fix the problem. The big issues aren't solved as easily as the wine shortage, unfortunately, but we can find a way to address them and to alleviate them to some degree at least. And then there are others of us who are like the servants. We'll listen to the directions that are given and do our part to make ministry happen. And all three are necessary. Noticing a problem or a need doesn't solve the problem. We can't fix anything that we haven't seen, though, so we have to notice it. And you can't fix something without an idea or a plan of what you're going to do. And nothing happens if people don't actually do the work and carry out the plan. All three are necessary. Sometimes we'll be like Jesus and we'll ask, what concern is that to you and me? Well, people can only do so much. A group of people can only do so much. A church can only do so much. And there are lots of needs around us. So we have to discern which ones are ours to address and which ones are better left for someone else. We have to make a choice. Nelson Mandela said, "May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears." So we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we notice that concerns us? What do we hope to accomplish? What do we feel that we are able to do about it? We shouldn't ask questions like, what are we afraid to try? Ministry requires noticing ideas, planning, and doing. They're all important and they're all necessary. Well, the purpose of the church is to bear fruit. I've heard an example of the church and ministry that uses the example of an apple tree. The purpose of an apple tree is to produce apples, right? To produce fruit. Well, the church is like an apple tree. We're meant to produce fruit. Those that do ministry are the branches. They produce where the fruit is produced. Well, the branches are the people who notice the needs around us in our community and in the world. And they notice what ministry needs to happen within the church. What needs do we have within our congregation? They're also the people who make plans to address them. And they're the people who work to carry out the plan, all of them mixed together. These are the teams of people who prepare worship, who offer Bible and book studies, who plan and carry out fellowship activities, care for the people who are hurting or the homebound, that offer grief share for those who have lost loved ones that reach out to our neighbors around us, who find ways to meet the needs of people in our community, but also around the world. These are the people who help us love God, love one another, and love our neighbor. And these are the activities that produce fruit. But the branches can't survive unless they get nutrients, and those come from the roots of the tree. Roots are necessary, but roots by themselves cannot produce fruit. But they enable the branches to produce fruit. So what are the roots in the church, you're probably wondering? There are the people in the church who do the business of the church. They keep it running and in shape and doing it. They're people who handle the finances, the staffing. They take care of the building, those sorts of things. They handle the business so that the other people that are branches can focus on doing ministry while keeping the church healthy. So the roots are necessary, but we want as many people as we can to be branches. Because if the more branches we have, the more fruit we produce. So that's the purpose of the church, right? Our mission, to produce fruit, to make disciples and transform the world. So the church does need to keep our committees right now. We need to keep them full, right? We need lots of people in the roots. As the church gets smaller, though, you keep putting as many people in the committee and you get fewer and fewer branches because you're pulling branches down to be part of the roots. So we lose some of the people that do ministry and produce fruit. So in order to produce more fruit, we need to take some of the people away from the roots and allow them to move up to the branches and be mission workers to produce fruit. And we do that by moving to what we call a single board structure. It allows less people to be in the roots because we eliminate some of those committees, and we free them up to be noticers, planners, and doers of ministry rather than business of the church. So we have fewer people in one board, and all the rest of them get to be doers. So we want to be a church that produces more fruit. And so we're going to be making some adjustments and moving to a single board structure. And you probably aren't going to notice much of a change unless you're currently serving on a committee. Those who are serving on ministry teams, which are branches, may notice that they have some more people coming to join them because they're moving from the roots into the branches. And those people will be thrilled, right, to have more people with them. So we want to be a church that produces fruit, and this is going to be a move that will enable us to do it better. But it won't happen overnight, and there's going to be a bit of a learning curve on how we do it. But it's coming. This is a move that reflects our hopes of producing more fruit, rather than reflecting our fear of not having enough people to do the ministry that we would like to do. At the wedding, when the wine ran out, Jesus could have produced some average wine. It would have been enough to get by. But instead, Jesus produced much great wine. If you do the math on the containers, it's probably somewhere in the ballpark of 150 gallons. This was a cup runneth over sort of miracle. When the wine steward tasted the water that had been turned to wine, he said, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus didn't just produce much wine, he produced the best wine. I kind of like to think of communion like that. It's a celebration where we get a small taste and are reminded that the best is yet to come. One day we will be eating at the great banquet. So let's head to the table.